Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show 789, we've got lots to talk about. Richard and Garry are here. We're going to be talking about Windows Terminal. We've got Windows Insider news. Looking back at Windows 8.1 this week. We've got some Duo news, 10x info, more and lots more. So let's get straight to Richard and Garry. Richard, Garry, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We're back here again, and we've got a lot of things to talk about tonight. Some interesting stuff coming up. We're going to talk a little bit Windows 10x. We've got some Outspace stuff. I'm playing Terminal, Windows Terminal. I know it's not exactly consumer, but I imagine most of our listeners like that kind of thing. We've got new builds, some Duo stuff, and Garry, you've got some Alexa news as well. Yeah. Correct. Where should we start? Well, let's start with Windows Terminal. I know not everybody's the most excited thing for Windows Terminal, but I guess we're all Windows Terminal. Garry, do you use Windows Terminal? Is it something?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
I can imagine you using that quite a lot.
Yeah, sometimes I only work with Windows Terminal.
Yeah. And did you see that the Terminal 1.6 has actually got a?
Yes, they've ruined it, Ian. They've ruined it. Is what they've done.
I'll share my screen so we can show this.
It's utterly ruined now. I'm very sad to say that they're moving away from hacking JSON files manually. You've got a settings UI in it now. Oh, that's just the humanity.
Yeah, so there you go. There's a settings UI.
Although it's not straightforward, is it? Because one, if you choose settings from that drop down menu, it will throw you into your JSON editor.
You've got to manually put the key association in the setting file. Yeah,
you've got to do binding and also things like binding. So it's as Microsoft will say, it's a preview right now. Yeah, there's not everything that's in that in the current JSON file is in the settings UI. But I have to say, as an example of say doing a fluent design dialogue, it works really well. And I'm ashamed to say it. I have now used it more than I go hacking around in the JSON file. Although I will miss the moment of fear where you think, am I going to do something awful in here? A typo cause all kinds of grief. But this just makes everything very, very simple. Yeah,
that's it. I actually quite like the settings. It did give me the opportunity to play around where I did tinker with the JSON file on my other machines, but on this one I didn't. So I just thought, I'm going to set this up. So on my production machine, I've sort of got some nice PowerShells, and I've got a light mode command mode and a dark mode command mode, and I think it's pretty cool actually.
Yeah, and there's some other bit. I mean, there's some other bits and pieces. Again, 1.6 is the preview release. It's not the actual full release. I think the full release is 1.5. But we should see it appearing in later builds. Yeah, I mean, I can't help wondering if they're putting this in now because they're coming to the end of things they're going to add to it. Because I mean, it's getting to be more and more just little tweaks and improvements here and there. I think the speed at which this tool has come together since it first appeared, which I think was it back in 2019? Did we see the first builds of it? I think
so. Yeah.
Oh, yes, and I think you had to sort of roll your own source code as well. But it's moved on in leaps and bounds. It's very impressive. So I guess the last major thing to put in there is the settings tool, which I don't know. It seems to be just a step too far towards usability, really. Yeah. It's a text mode tool. Therefore, you should have to edit files in JSON. That's how it should be done, not with a friendly user interface. Goodness me. What do you think, Garry?
Well, I don't know. I'm quite a UX person anyway. I think there's times when you should have UX, and sometimes when you need text. Text sometimes is quicker, but you've got nice. So I could say nice tips, which the terminal does give you. So.
When Richard first saw the Gem desktop, the Amiga desktops, in the late 80s and the early 90s, he would go, "God, this is nothing like my Texas Instrument command prompt. You can't beat basic."
Absolutely, and let me say, when I first saw the Windows NT, Windows 95 show, I thought, "Where's Program Manager gone?" And that's that TI-99. I was thinking, well, come on now. I'm used to flipping switches for registers. What's going on here? Where's my punch tape gone? So that's old.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I like it. I must admit, I do like it, and I've been using it for a while. I especially with the tabbed interface, I do like having sort of leave one open with PowerShell, and like I said, I've got a few different command ones, and you've got the Linux on there as well. If you've got the subsystem for Linux installed as well, so you get the whole thing in one nice UI, which I quite like. So yeah, I think well worth anybody that's any kind of power user. It's well worth having on your system.
I mean, I'd say any kind of user, because most people at some time or other are going to have to, they'll find themselves having to do something at a command prompt, and it's just a really good shell for running. Obviously there's the Windows command, there's PowerShell, there's all kinds of things you can run in it, and it is straightforward and easy to use, and I'd recommend it. I do find it interesting, of course, that Microsoft obviously has to maintain the old shell in Windows for, I guess, years yet, because it's part of the server and desktop OS that has to be supported for at least another 8 years or so, I would think. So I wonder if there'll come a time at some point they might replace that with this. The other thing, which I don't think we've mentioned about this Windows terminal, is, of course, it's another example of open source at Microsoft.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I wonder if one of the things I remember when I first got Windows 10S on the Surface Go, I remember thinking, I don't need 10X anyway. I'll be happy with. I don't need 10S. I don't need the full desktop. I'll be quite happy with 10S. I've got all the apps. Everything's fine. And then I went, all right, I just want to go to a command prompt to do a ping. Oh, there's no command prompt because 10S Windows 10 in S mode doesn't have command prompt. Doesn't have that. And that was one of the.
For your own good.
I lasted about a week before I ended up taking it out of S mode and putting it in just for the command prompt. So I wonder, I haven't tried this, but wonder if because terminal's available in the store, isn't it? I wonder if that terminal works in Windows 10 S mode.
That's a good question. I don't know really. It's
well, the question is, does anybody use Windows 10 in S mode anymore?
Yeah, Microsoft are very quiet about just how many people leave their machines in S mode, aren't they? It's very, very quiet. You would have thought if that was going great guns like, say, Teams is, they'd say, hey, guess how many S mode machines are out there? And instead they've said absolutely nothing about S mode.
Yeah, I think we probably know why. S mode is going to go away, isn't it, at some point? When eventually we get Windows 10X.
Yep, definitely.
That will be everything. I did do a little bit of playing around with 10X, as I mentioned last week. So it's not 10X is not been released by Microsoft apart from the dual screen emulator. I have been playing with both the emulator, the dual screen, and playing about on the Lumia. And don't need to go into too many details because all those previews are available. But I have to say the performance of 10X is pretty impressive on an old device like a Lumia or an emulator. So that, I think, bodes quite well for some of these low-cost devices. That I think 10X has got potential on hardware that's not not the most powerful hardware out there. I think there's a lot of potential for 10X. And also, I noticed the UI is pretty polished as well. The little animations and the task switching and the power on, power off, and all quite nicely polished. So hopefully we'll get proper previews of it soon. We can really go into it and talk about it properly. But I've got a good feeling about it when we do get it. Whether it struggles from this problem with installing Win32 apps, that's an entirely another thing. We won't really know until we get to real devices and play around them. But I've got a good feeling about 10X anyway. I was going to look to see if I can get Windows Terminal installed on here. Just going to try and get that installed as well. And the app model of 10X actually reminded me. Last week we talked about Windows 8 and sort of what a shock to the system that was. But so I recorded the next part of my videos and we looked at Windows 8.1. And actually, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it was like 2013 when Windows 8.1 came out, and then the version I had was the 2014 update. But It was good to see the start menu back. It's quite interesting to see how much easier it was once they returned that start menu.
Yes, I mean, a few more keyboard cues did help. Although, of course, it was still the lurch when you clicked on the start button and bang, this full screen appeared.
Yeah, that was right. Yeah, but I found it was a lot easier to use. I found as a keyboard user. I actually forgotten about when I did the Windows 8 one. I forgot about the fact that the right-click menu on the start menu was the little bar across the bottom. Do you remember? Well, and I think all UWP apps had that, didn't they, Gary? It was an option to have it's like a context. It wasn't even context menu. I can't remember. There was a name for it because I did it in my Flickr app. But you put all your menu options in the little bar at the bottom.
Yeah.
But of course,
It's called now.
Yeah, it had a name, didn't it? I remember.
It did.
That.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. It's gone.
But with the 8.1, it brought context menus back with the right click and the tiles. You could resize them and things like that. So, but still, there was a bit of the schism between the desktop apps and the what were Metro apps, modern apps, we called them, I think, by that time. So, but you could at least have 3 side by side as well that I found, as opposed to the basic split that you had on Windows 8. So you can check that out anyway in Windows 8.1 and see how many of those annoyances it actually fixed with. And I think actually for desktop users it was a lot better. But there are a lot of comments on the videos. People say they loved 8 and 8.1 as a tablet operating system. It's amazing how many people have said that. So, and I think that's probably one reason why I liked it at the time, because I was using a Surface RT and then I used the Surface Pro 3.
Yeah, I mean, even I agree with that. The 8 and 8.1 were great as tablet operating systems, and as you say, I had a Surface RT as well, and a Surface RT2, and it worked really, really well right up until I had to use a desktop PC, and then it all went horribly wrong.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So anyway, you can check that out. But what I did see interesting this week, I don't know if you've had a chance to read this, that Steven Sinofsky, the man behind Windows 8, is publishing his memoirs about his time at Microsoft.
Interesting. That would probably make an interesting read. I mean, he's certainly a divisive figure.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember at the time when he was doing the blog post, wasn't he? He did the Microsoft Windows 8 blog, and they were immensely long. Do you remember? I remember reading through them. They were very, very long blog posts.
Yeah, and I think if you read what he's been writing about more recently, he's never really got away from that touch first approach.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the exact model. This is going on a site. Maybe you know about this. It's going on. Oh, I lost where it's going. It's some kind of subscription model site. It's not a traditional book that he's publishing on this, but you can read the first installment anyway, which is called. It's at hardcoresoftware.learningbyshipping.com. And the first chapter is becoming a Microsoft employee, which is very long. It's quite interesting, but I think I'd probably be more interested in the Windows 8 time. Because he was the guy behind Office, wasn't he, before Windows 8?
Well, also Windows 7. I mean, he also, we shouldn't forget the fact that he did also work on Windows 7 and Vista as well. And 7, of course, was the great success, and then 8 was obviously the well, we all know what 8 was, and it wasn't a success.
Yeah. But like you said, he was quite a divisive figure, and now he's quite outspoken on Twitter and a bit anti-Microsoft, I would guess. I would say.
Well, yes. I mean, he didn't leave under the best of circumstances, did he? Really, it was not the happiest of departures. I think when he left at the end of 2012, I think, if memory serves. And yeah, it was not the happiest of departures. But I think a lot of things were changing in Microsoft at that time, and obviously we're in many ways reaping the rewards of those changes. Certainly, Microsoft stockholders are.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about that, but obviously I think Baumer hung on a bit after he left, and then obviously was succeeded by Satya Nadella. But yes, I'm not sure Sinofsky's has ever really gotten over the reaction that the world had to Windows 8, and and possibly also with the Microsoft. It's he is, as you say, quite outspoken now, and maybe critical about where things have gone, because obviously things since his departure have slowly but surely begun to move back to the non-touch first approach that Windows 8 pioneered.
Yeah, and certainly there was a lot of secrecy, wasn't there, at that time as well? There was no Windows Insider program or anything like that. I think we had Windows 8 had three public betas, I think.
Yes, I mean, I can remember seeing a few and just being horrified by what I was seeing. Whereas I think for all its faults, there is at least some path to get feedback through to people using via the Windows 10 Insider program. The people involved are more available now and accessible, whereas certainly under Windows 8 it was very hush hush, very secret. But I think that certainly the first public beta was utterly horrifying.
In fact, if I remember, there was two, wasn't there? There was that first public one you're talking about. There was a second one, and then there was the RTM one. I think that was it.
Wasn't there? Yeah, wasn't there beta 1, beta 2, a release candidate? Was there? Did that go?
Yeah,
did that go public? I can't quite remember now.
I do remember being an MVP back then was a strange experience.
It was, because we were, prior to that, with XP and Vista as an MVP, we got quite a bit, especially the media center bit. We got quite a lot of information and we had good communication. And then when Windows 8 development started, they really brought the shutters down and didn't talk about things. And
do you think somebody?
That's one of the things that suffered from it.
Do you think somebody within Microsoft knew? And they knew.
Yeah.
but no one could actually say that this is what you're doing here is, because I mean, I know that without exception, every person I know that saw the beta said this is not going to go well. This is simply not going to. It's not going to work on desktop or laptops. It's not going to go well at all. I just wonder. I've always wondered if that message got through and why it was so totally ignored.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder if they got caught up in the whole iPad post PC thing.
Well, certainly. I mean, the purchase of Nokia was almost a reaction to the whole we must have a foothold in the post PC game. Although, I guess one could argue that the Azure approach has turned out to be the correct approach to the post PC world. That actually, the device you use to access the internet or the cloud makes no difference. It can be an iPad, it can be a PC, as long as you're in the cloud. Who cares?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We could probably do a whole show on the post PC, because we're now in the post PC era. Well,
we were in the post PC era up until 2020, and then everyone decided for some reason they had to have another PC at home in a big hurry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been the last year for everything, for all the things that have happened last year. I was listening to a talk by the Dell CTO. He was saying, well, basically, people suddenly realise you have to have a second or third PC in the home because everyone's now, or many people having to remote work or homeschool. So suddenly we've gone from post PC to these iPad things don't really work too well for doing real work at home. We need a PC.
Yeah, and it's still had a knock on with the industry, isn't it? Because Dell is a good one. I still struggle to get hold of volume machines, Dell, through the enterprise channel. They're really struggling to deliver them, and they're blaming Intel and saying some Intel chips weren't available. I don't know how much of it, but certainly that still it's getting hold of laptops is still not easy in the sort of getting this, the standard business type ones. You can pay the premium ones and get the really expensive ones, but if you want to roll out a lot of them, then you want the bog standard ones, and they are hard to get hold of.
Well, for sure. I mean, Intel obviously had the chip shortage early part of last year in 2019, and I'm not sure they ever really resolved the issue. No. They've certainly not managed to go down to the I think 7 nanometer manufacturing processes that other manufacturers are using. But I think certainly the Intel chip shortage has been an issue. But of course, Intel have had a fairly major change at the top anyway. The old boss has gone, the new boss is coming in. And the new guy, whose name I'm afraid I haven't got in front of me, I do apologise. He obviously, I think, had a hand in the 486, I think, didn't he?
Yep.
So
it's his name as well, but
so it's kind of a case of putting an engineer back at the helm, which I think is probably for Intel going to be a good thing, because they have, I wouldn't say dropped the ball in the last year, but certainly the shortages those shortages should have resolved themselves by now as fabs and plants come back online, and they haven't resolved themselves yet. I'm still hearing about people having problems getting hold of gear.
Yeah, I think interesting turnaround. You know, nobody predicted the events last year, and it's had a massive effect on the industry and how people work. And we're definitely beyond what was the post-PC era, and in very much in a productivity era of computing. Now we're back to devices, but these aren't just for the sake. They're not there for just sitting and browsing around. People are doing real work on them.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think with the current interface paradigms we have, you have to really have a keyboard and a mouse. It's just it's so many UIs are designed around that. If you're doing productivity tasks, for basic consumption tasks, a straightforward screen's fine. A tablet or a phone works well. But I think for an awful lot of productivity stuff, just the way the processors are designed at the moment, you still need that keyboard and mouse, and for that you just got to have a laptop or a PC or a Mac.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, we can follow along with that blog. I'll include a link along with the show notes.
I'm looking forward to reading it.
Yeah, especially when it gets to the 8.1, the Windows 8 era. Okay, so switching tack slightly. This is one from you, Richard. I got the email about this as well today. Our old friends Outspace that do the VR stuff, they require Microsoft accounts.
Yes, they are. They're kind of following. I mean, they were acquired by Microsoft. I think, what was it, 2017, 2018? They got bought up.
Yeah, when they first brought the headsets out. Yeah.
And so they've obviously had their own account system for since their inception, and it's not really a surprise. It's just it's one more thing that people might get a bit angsty about, and that is that obviously if you want to use the Outspace VR, which is, I think we did a show in Outspace, didn't we, a while ago?
Yes.
If you want to use that, and it's a very interesting meeting area, a community area, and I think we should do another show in Outspace at some point since we're all still stuck at home. It'd be quite fun. But you now need to have, or you're going to have, it's a default to a Microsoft account integration. So you're kind of going to need to have a Microsoft account to use Outspace VR. It will certainly become the default login process eventually. I think initially they rolled it out to early access, and now it's been pushed out. I think you and I have seen the email. It's been pushed out to Windows mixed reality, Oculus Quest users, and what have you. You basically being prompted to say, okay, it's time to move across to the Microsoft account. And I think eventually, later on this year, it'll just be the default. And it's if you got a Microsoft account, it's fine because it means there's just one login to remember. It's certainly going to have a lot more development and security behind it than the Outspace VR account. It means the Outspace guys can concentrate on the VR stuff and not authentication, and just hand that over to the Microsoft account. The downside is, of course, you may not want a Microsoft account, in which case this service may not be for you.
Yeah, it's kind of these big companies. It makes sense for them to want to do it, but you do kind of lose that independent offering, a bit like with the Oculus, isn't it? With Facebook accounts, I feel happier using a Microsoft account than I would a Facebook account, but that might just be my bias. But it's inevitable that these companies are going to want to have a single authentication because, something like authentication, Microsoft it's their policy, isn't it, to use their authentication system. It works brilliantly with the two-factor and all the different tools that they've got and the authenticator apps and everything else. So it makes sense to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm no massive fan of Microsoft and their account system, but there's no getting away from the fact that it's had a lot of investment. There's lots of authentic authentication. It's going to be secure. And of course, you're going to share the same account around Xbox and Microsoft 365 and other steps. Even, dare I say it, Minecraft, because obviously that's also that also acquired the Microsoft account integration as well. So but it's kind of, I don't know, it's bittersweet in that it is another small player kind of it's that last bit of independence being stripped away because it's now part of the Borg.
Yeah, I think they've been very I would say gentle touch with Outspace. They've not done a huge amount. They'd saved them from insolvency, didn't they?
Absolutely, they did. Yeah. Because they required 2017 is when it happened, and they're required. So it's taken the best part of 3-4 years for this to come about. So, and in a way, it's good to see it's happening because it means at least it's being supported and not being quietly axed or killed off.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, who knows? It's the first time. It's the first time I've seen Microsoft mention Xbox and VR in the same announcement for a while.
Yeah, very long time.
And probably for a while before you see it again. Oh, and talking about Microsoft accounts, you see, I don't know when this was launched, but Ignite registration's open now, so I don't know whether I'm late on the scene on this one or it's a fairly new thing. But you can register for Ignite now. I
think they opened today. Yeah, it's for the March 2nd or 3rd, isn't it? For the Ignite event. Yeah, so it's kind of Ignite Part 2 because obviously there was Ignite last year. Normally there's just one Ignite per year, and then they take Ignite on the road. But now, of course, they don't take anything on the road anymore. It's all virtual. So yeah, quite short event, isn't it? Actually, just 2nd to 3rd of March. And Microsoft actually do have a whole load of events coming up in quick succession. So looking forward to see what comes out and what's announced.
The thing with all the virtual events is you can kind of just register for them all, can't you? Then and then just take your pick on what you want to participate in.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's certainly getting access to people is becoming more and more difficult. That's for sure.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, we talked about the virtual events. They're great in one respect because of accessibility and open to everybody. But on the other hand, you lose the face-to-face stuff. And
you do indeed.
I think the biggest thing you miss is that sort of 3 degrees of separation networking where you find out what's happening to other people in an organisation by talking to someone else.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's an ongoing issue. I mean, I think, we've done 2020 now. I think, hopefully at some point we'll start to see some in-person events coming back, maybe towards the end of this year. I think I am hearing from many people now that there's obviously a great financial imperative to keep things virtual, but certainly you are missing the networking, you're missing the face-to-face, and you're missing the, as you say, Gary, the degrees of separation where you can find things out and just talk to people. Plus, I mean, I'm not sure the message is necessarily getting across as well as it used to because there's no longer the buzz anymore around these events. There's no longer people talking about them, and a lot of these are very much like sitting watching canned videos. If it's a company that decides to go down the canned video route, that can be quite disappointing as well.
I remember I watched a couple of things around CES this year, and one of the companies had a press briefing, and over 90% of that press briefing was a gig by a well-known country musician. Which is great if you like that kind of musician and you want to attend his concert, but it wasn't really very informative about their products at all, or even particularly inspiring.
Yeah, and it's kind of fine if you're there in person and you get yourself a drink and you can chat to your colleagues and whatever while it's on. But when you just sat in your spare room watching it, it's not the same, is it?
Exactly.
Or your shed.
I can just see someone tapping away on the Satya and the event in the chat saying, "Dear Satya, I am set in my pants watching you."
Yeah. Hopefully we'll get out of that sooner rather than later. Well, I've registered for mine, so I think next one's Build, isn't it? That's the one after that, isn't it?
I think Build's the big one. Yeah. I mean, the Ignite, I'm not 100% sure what's going to appear there, but I think Build will be where I'm expecting to see a lot of stuff around certainly 10x. I mean, do you reckon we'll see a 10x beta at Ignite? It's not really the forum for 10x, is it? It's more productivity stuff.
Make more sense to have it at Build.
Yeah.
If they're going to have one at all, then it would be Build. Yeah. Well,
it's got to be. If it doesn't happen to Build, then there's a real problem. It's got to happen to Build.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'm holding out for we'll get something. There's at least some kind of preview program for developers and to get started with it. They can't put them under everybody's chair though, can they? So this week we did get, or last week we did get a new insider build as well. 21301. again, we're not getting the most exciting new features with these builds at the moment, but yeah, at least we got one.
Yeah, the touch keyboard design's been improved. Yay! It's pretty exciting. I mean, I'm wondering if, I mean, it's called the dev channel. Do you reckon they're kind of having to sort of, you know, they're being beaten up to do one release a week or something? Because it kind of feels like they need to just take a few weeks and put some interesting stuff in this and then do a release, because it just seems to be like a, you know, a drip of bits and pieces, but nothing particularly exciting. And of course, the other weird thing, have you noticed they're doing an awful lot of servicing pipeline releases as well? I mean,
yeah, there was one this week. Wasn't there?
I mean, it's not exactly, you know, an unusual thing to do these releases to test their servicing pipeline, but they seem to be doing them a lot. Almost every other build seems to have a follow-up where they test their servicing pipeline. So, any idea what's going on there?
I don't know. Gary, have you any thoughts on that?
No, I haven't heard anything along those. I mean, it just seems odd. But...
No. Yeah, I think the last 3-4 weeks I've had the same. I've had a servicing release each Monday.
Yeah, it's weird. And of course, I mean, in the last update, they actually when they did the servicing pipeline, they did also note that they updated the known issues list as well to mention that some PCs are getting bug checks, or as we know them, the blue or green screens of death. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't know why that would be. I mean, I'm all for testing reliability, but it would be. I'm sure that they must have figured out it's working by now. But
well, yeah, I mean, Windows Update's been going for quite some time, so you would have hoped they'd have sussed that servicing pipeline out by now. Unless again, you know, there's things happening under the hood, which is one of the problems I've always had with the Windows Inside blogs, in that they simply don't tell you everything that's happened. And occasionally they get badly caught out by that when, for example, they accidentally broke the ARM60, the Intel X64 stuff on ARM. So and you think, well, you didn't mention you changed that, and of course they had obviously made a change somewhere, and that broke it. So if you compare and contrast, I know it's a very different project, and Windows Terminal is much newer, much smaller, but it's very easy to find out what's changed in there. Whereas, you know, you only get really what's changed in Windows filtered through the lens of the Windows Insider team. So I kind of want to have more detailed release notes.
Yeah, it's kind of, they want to put the headline. Perhaps they've got the blog post with the headlines on, but then if they actually had their internal change log, it would be too much information. So I suppose they're trying to draw the line somewhere, making it relevant, but without making it too onerous to go through all the check-ins and submits and everything that's gone in on each build.
Yeah, and of course you never know what's going to be in those texts too. Because I don't know if you saw the extensible storage engine was open sourced by Microsoft this week, which is kind of the JetBlue. I think it's a storage which you find on Windows. It's used by like Windows Search, Windows Update. It's whenever a Windows component needs to stash some data in indexable database, it sticks it in this, and it's been, you know, the APIs have been around for a while, but Microsoft open sourced it, and it dates back, I think, to NT351. I believe it goes back a long way, but they've open sourced it, but not included the comments. Actually, purposely stripped the comments out. And you kind of think, oh, okay, I wonder what was in there then. Yeah. I think
Control
F,
probably a lot of inside stuff that they don't want to share. Yeah.
So, and again, I wonder how much of that happens with the fact they can't share all the release information about Windows 10. Maybe there are things in there, as you say, that may just make things a bit too complex or hard to read, or who knows what else is in there? What confessions could be lurking in there? I actually looked at some code that I wrote about 30 years ago, and I found it was I had used comments. I was pleased to see, but mainly they were either me saying I'm very sorry to whoever's got to maintain this, or I'd actually committed the cardinal sin of simply writing what the line did in English as opposed to saying why I was doing what I was doing. I thought if I could find that me 30 years ago, I'd have a good serious talking to him.
Oh, I don't had a secret serious talking to you. I've been.
And I thought, oh dear, just goes through.
Code.
Oh, yeah, so let he who has not put a duff comment into a 25-year-old.
I've done it as well.
It's one of those things. So I can't really blame Microsoft for doing that. I'm sure there's many coders out there who've done the same thing and thought, oh crikey. I once did a code review many years ago of a developer, and what this person had done was written a little poem in the comment block, apologizing for the fact his code didn't work, and we would find out in a few years' time, and he's very sorry. Yeah, that was fun.
I did. Yeah, I've discovered something once very similar. Someone wrote a haiku. Why the value was hard coded in that particular code. It was quite funny. But, definitely interesting. Some comments you say.
Hard coded values. Oh my goodness me. yes. I can remember the sheer horror of discovering one day a hard coded username and password. That was bad. That was not a good day. Many again emphasize this was decades ago, but.
Yeah, you make sure you change the name to protect the innocent.
I'm not naming any names at all. As I said, let she or he who's never done something really bad in source years ago cast the first stone, and I'm not going to cast any stones.
This week, not as an insider build, but a production build, did get an update to the Surface Duo, the January update. Microsoft actually skipped the December update. They publish monthly updates because they include the Android security updates that month, but they actually skipped the December one because there was I think they found an issue with it, and so rather than releasing it with an issue, they held it over and put the January one in. So I did record a quick video of that, but there's not a huge amount in it, to be honest. It's the usual story of improved stability and touch response and that kind of thing. But actually, it made quite a big difference. The touch response is more accurate now. It's the gestures seem more accurate for some reason as well now. So I also found the camera a bit more responsive as well. So it's a mandatory update anyway. So it just gets installed as part of the monthly update. So you get all the Android security updates and sort of these touch improvements. But I found it pretty, since the October update, really, it's been pretty stable. I'm not really getting any major issues. You do, if you go onto the sort of the Surface Duo Reddit forums, you do see a lot of people posting issues in there. But then you see the same on any forum when you go and you see, some people all happy with the device and some people moaning about every visual glitch. So there's always both sides. But for me, then anyway, that Duo update has been pretty good. We should find out soon when the UK launches. Maybe we'll find out Ignite.
Maybe.
Because I think they said it was. They didn't specifically say, did they? But it was early this year that I think it was UK, France, Germany, and some other countries that were going to get the Duo. So we no idea the pricing yet, either or specs or anything like that. But I imagine it'll be the same spec and very similar pricing.
Hasn't someone seen a listing with more memory?
Yeah, there's some sort of 6 and an 8 gig version. I thought it was 8, to be honest, already. So I need to double check. But yeah, I think somebody did see a different variant on memory. I think when the currently in the US ones, I think you just had the 2 storage options, the 128 and 256. I think that was the only difference with them. But we'll also see what those prices are. Maybe this is the thing without big conferences, physical conferences, that they just put press releases out now, don't they, and blog posts, and that's your launch fanfare. I mean, even like Samsung with their S21 launch and everything, it's not the same as it used to be. I suppose it would have been Mobile World Congress this time of year, wouldn't it?
It would have been
February, yeah.
Well, that's when this all kicked off last year. Don't remind me.
Yeah, that's right. It was, wasn't it? Yeah. In fact, it was exactly that, wasn't it? Because I think didn't Intel drop out early, and then one by one they all fell by the wayside.
Yes, and then after that, every single conference just went down like dominoes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right, Gary. That was the start of it last year. Right. Okay. Well, now, Gary, you wanted to mention about our home automation friend from Amazon. I won't kick all the devices off everywhere. You said that something on the routines has been updated.
Yeah, well, I don't know how long this has been out. I discovered it when I was looking to try and find that solution to that question we had asked a couple of weeks back about routines and doing timers and things like that. But one of the things they've added on routines now is if you create a routine, you've always had all sorts of actions you could do, like making Alexa say something, got your audible box, calendars, calling, or sort of normal things like that. Maybe trigger if this, then that. But they've added a new one at the bottom now, which is customized. And basically, you can key into that any Alexa command you want to make. And it seems to work. The only caveat I would say is it has to be the last entry in a set of in a routine. So you can't have multiple of these triggers in a routine. And it doesn't seem to be able to trigger another routine, which would be nice. It seems to only be able to trigger publicly available commands. And I suspect it won't work particularly well with skills, because skills have to publish themselves to be in a routine mode to be able to be actually accessible. I think that's because I've got the feeling that routines don't run in your Alexa area effectively, so they haven't got access to themselves. But it works. It seems to work really well to be able to do certain things. There you go. Customized down the bottom. Yeah, and that's available in the UK. So unlike a lot of the stuff they actually release for Alexa and the routines, which are not available in the UK, it is actually available in the UK. The other things which I don't think we've actually mentioned on the show before, they did improve a couple of things last year. You've now got a couple of things you can do within the triple dot menu within a routine. One of which is to copy the routine to another routine. So you can take all your actions, create another routine.
That's good. Because it's got a switch on routine, and then you could clone it and then change it to make it a switch off routine. Yeah,
you could do. Or equally, if you want to say multiple different things to trigger the same action, you can just routine copy it and duplicate it. I mean, it's a bit of a pain having to duplicate all the actions. It'd be nice if you could trigger another routine, and I can't figure a way of doing that. The other really nice thing is you can share routines with other people now. So if you've got a nice routine you've written, you can then share it to anybody else. So it really is quite powerful, that option. Now there's a couple of things which we haven't got in the UK yet, which I would like to see starting to come. One is that some people in the States are now seeing as an action the ability to trigger based on noise. So I know you've probably seen Amazon Guard, which is their new thing in the States for basically home security, which can listen for fire alarms, listen for breaking glass, and all sorts of things like that. This is basically using the new AI chip in the newer Echo devices. So I suspect it won't work on older Echo devices, but it would be able to do things like, well, the one they say in the article I saw was listen for a baby crying, for example, and then trigger an event happening. So, or a dog barking, or I said the fire alarm going off, or glass breaking, or anything you want to specifically listen to, and then you can trigger an event action based on that as well. So yeah, I think that's pretty powerful. Another thing I wanted to talk about on Alexa side of things is a newish skill. It's been out for a few months now, called Voice Monkey. I don't know if you've come across this, Ian.
No.
But this remember that the doorbell thing we had on the show a few months back.
Yeah.
Which was basically a way of triggering effectively a virtual doorbell. This is similar, but takes it one step further. It's basically an API to trigger Alexa routines remotely, and you can plug it in using. It's got a web. Basically uses a URL. You can trigger it from anything. Basically, so people are using this to do things like turn the lights on or turn the lights off when they're on a Zoom call, or turn the lights red when on a Skype call, or things like that. Anything which has got a webhook options. Say Zoom has got a webhook, so you go into a call, you can actually make it trigger something. Teams has got a similar thing, you can make it trigger something. You can then make it call an Alexa routine effectively. To do things. And at the moment this is completely free of charge, so it's voicemonkey.io. Just sign up with your Alexa account, and I'm going to try and keep it free for as long as possible, but it's got some really nice things on here. You can get things like it can trigger a notification to your Alexa device, and or send an announcement. But on the announcement, you can also include video or images. So if you've got something like a built-yourself doorbell or your temperature sensor, you can actually get it to send a picture of the greenhouse at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
Or if you've got noise triggering, you get that. So some really nice features, nice utility in there. So again, I've been sort of playing around with this to see if it could help with this whole idea of the playing events at the same time as playing music. Not quite there with that one yet, but the doorbell option from last I was mentioning does seem to have an option for doing that, because we can basically turn that on as part of the script, and then you can use the doorbell to trigger another script.
Right. Yeah.
So,
might be able to do the thing where you trigger the camera on. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's lots of options you've got now. So I think it's developing this. The Amazon Alexa routines are becoming a really good smart home hub. Effectively, they're starting to get a lot more functionality in there. Still missing quite a few things you'd want in a full-fledged hub, but it's definitely getting, for the average user, you could do an awful lot now.
Yeah, that's good, because I mean we lost all the complex stuff like Stringify and IFTTT, and so having them built into the app is a good way of doing it. I realize I can expand these routines a bit. I'm gonna have to play with that. See what else I can do with that. Yeah, my Christmas routines, maybe I can make them more elaborate than for next Christmas.
and you could then share your Christmas routines out to people as well. So it's good. I mean, that's quite powerful. I've shared some routines amongst my family, which have been quite useful. So
I guess then even manufacturers could share routines, and Philips Hue or whatever, they could share their customers' routines and things that they could make. You got a little ecosystem.
And one final thing I wanted to make sure on Alexa, which going back to Alexa itself, and I haven't seen this, and I don't know if any of you who've got iPhones have seen this, but apparently that certain people were getting as a beta the ability to type commands into the Amazon Alexa app on the iPhone.
Right.
To actually, so rather than having to effectively like a chatbot, effectively, rather than having to say it out loud, I'd quite like that. There have been a few things over time in the past which have done that. I mean, really, actually, something would be relatively easy to write because of the way Alexa works. But it would be a powerful option to be able to do that at times. Because, I've set some widgets up and things which do that, but not really. Running commands. I did actually used to have a smartwatch which allowed you to key in any Alexa command into something which you could trigger from the button on the smartwatch. So it's definitely a feasible idea, but I like that idea, because there's certainly times you don't want to be speaking to it, but you still want to be able to trigger your events. I used to use the big Alexa buttons to be able to do physical buttons to actually trigger actions, because although they're good for playing games, they're really cheap control buttons.
Yeah, well, you can do that. So if you're on your Teams meeting and you want to control your home automation rather than shouting over to your Alexa while you're on your call, you can control it with text. That's not a bad idea. Yeah, I like that idea. And of course, there is still the app for Windows 10 as well, which is quite full featured now. I use that quite a lot, actually. One thing I have noticed of that is it's a right pain if you want to try and do video calls on it, because you can't control which audio source it goes to. Right. So if you've got, like I have, multiple audio sources and multiple things, it's sometimes you find you try to have an audio conversation and the other end can't actually hear you because it's not picking up your microphone, or it's picking up audio from the webcam, which is miles away, or whatever. So it's and you've got no control over it. It would be nice if they added that in, but other than that, really good. That's one of the pains of 2020-21 IT work is getting people's teams working with microphones. I spent a lot of time doing that with various people. It doesn't work. It does work. It does. I promise you. Yeah. Oh, that's quite good. That's a good. I'm gonna have to go and have a look through my routine, see if I can have a play with them. I tend to really only use them at Christmas, when I've got the more complex stuff, and the routines. The rest of my routines are fairly straightforward, but I'll be able to throw some more options in there now. One thing I've found, I don't know if anybody else has come across this. I've had a couple of phantom Philips Hue switching. It's happened a couple of times now where all the lights have come on. All the Philips Hue ones in different rooms have all come on at the same time. And I've not figured out exactly what triggered it. So it could be a finger trouble from one of my sons. Like that's, but when you ask him how that, no, did he touch it? No, but they probably just weren't paying attention. But I'm not sure because I did have this happen at 2:00 in the morning. So when I don't think they would have been using the app. So I've not quite figured it yet. But what I have done is I've set my Hue lights to go when the power goes off to come back on in the mode they were on originally. Because what used to happen with Philips Hue, when there was a power cut, the light would just come back on, regardless of whether it was on or off when the power was disconnected. With an update they did, I think about a year ago, maybe more now, they made it so that it would go to the previous state. So if your light was on, the power goes off, and then the power comes back on, the light should come back on. But if it was off, it stays off. So I've done that because I wondered whether I had a very minor, blip of the power that was enough to trigger the Philips Hue to think the power had gone off, and then it put all the lights back on. But I don't have a Hue in my room, but one of my sons does. He says 2:00 in the morning, he says there's blinding light in his room. But of course, when I looked on my Arlo cameras, I could see that every light in the house all lit up at the same time. So I'm not quite figured out what it is yet, but hopefully maybe this power unit. But there's no logging of it. You can't say how the light A was turned on, or there's no sort of logs like that. I think that's where one advantage. If you rolled your own system, you could have some logging. But with Hue's, the basic Hue setup I haven't got anything like that. Which wouldn't normally be an issue, but apart from troubleshooting this one. But yeah, either that or I've got a ghost. It's something equally as like
a ghost in the machine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe this is the start of the machines taking over. We're waking me up at 2:00 in the morning. Right. Well, I think that's just about all the time we've got for this week. So, Richard, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Richard_Speed.
Have you got any more Lego on the go?
No, because strangely it's getting quite hard to import the stuff now. I can't imagine why.
Why that would be, yeah. And Gary, where can we find you?
You can find me at Garry WMA on Twitter. That's GARRY. And also on fascinatingtech.com. And also I pay Sono on YouTube as well, which has now got 960 subscribers. So I only need 40 more to get to the point where they actually might pay me a penny a view or something.
We need to get you on. We need to push that over. Get subscribing listeners, and then get Gary pushed over that limit. You can find me at iSticks on Twitter, on thislife.com. So until next week, we'll see you then.
Take care.
Cheerio.